Thanks for the opportunity for coming to give you a bit of an update today. So my name's Andy Frampton. I'm the Senior Relationship Manager here at UCAS. I do apologise, I'm a bit croaky today. I'm getting a cold, so hopefully my voice lasts for the next 20 minutes or so to just give you a bit of an update on everything that's happening from UCAS's perspective. So as Rena mentioned, we ran a session earlier this morning, which I've shamelessly stolen some slides from because I thought it was quite timely. So if anyone joined our UCAS Media Youth Site session this morning, I do apologise because I'm going to use some of the same material that you've already seen, but then come on to talk about some of the other differences that are happening this cycle. So really, I just kind of give you a shape of what's happening, a little bit about applicant behaviour and their mindset at the moment, and then kind of moving on to some of the UCAS specific challenges that we see alongside that as well. Hopefully it kind of gives you a bit of a sense of what's happening out there at the minute. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you exactly what clearing is going to look like, but it's kind of based on the intelligence that we can bring in to kind of give you an idea of what might be coming. So let's kick off with some kind of data and see what we're looking at the moment. So I suppose the best place to start is kind of the really positive news stories that we have at the moment around application and acceptance rates. And obviously there's been a lot of rhetoric in the press, there's been lots of stories, a lot of fear around what university might look like in terms of student numbers for this September. But I think it's really important to reflect that actually when we looked at the last data point, we've had more 18-year-old applications for this cycle than we've had at any point in terms of percentage share in the past. And that's despite there being less 18-year-olds in the population at the moment. So university is still certainly proving to be that popular route for applicants to look at. Within that, there's some really positive success stories as well. So applicant numbers for nursing are up 15% on last year. And we generally tend to find if we enter a period of recession or there's a challenging jobs market, the things like nursing, medicine, teaching always perform very well. But I think the nursing story is particularly important, and we find a lot of nursing applicants. We often have mature learners and learners from widening participation backgrounds going down that particular route. So it's a really positive success story from that side of things. Obviously, applications are one part of the story, but actually it's turning those applications into students actually enrolling, which I think is kind of everyone's big challenge at the moment. And I'm sure a lot of you are doing a lot of key warm activities, and I'm going to talk more about some of the messaging around those shortly. But we've got more students holding firm choice applications than we did in the last cycle. And the number of students holding a deferred place, so looking to start in 2021 instead of 2020, is actually down on the percentage that we had for last year. So there's been lots of talk about applicants looking to defer, and I'll share some data on that shortly. But in terms of what it actually looks like from a student number perspective, we're not seeing any more applicants holding those deferred places at the moment. I think the middle bubble there is a good news story, but it's also a big challenge that we've got more international firm offer holders than we did in the last cycle. So at this stage, international applicants are still very keen to take up those places. But there is a challenge that actually if we see a percentage of those applicants not turning up or unable to enrol at the start of term, then that can potentially be a fairly big market share. In terms of kind of what we know at the moment, there certainly is some nervousness in particular international markets, but it's probably still too early to say what that will actually result in terms of any deficit in terms of students actually turning up to enrol at the start of term. So we've also been looking through this work partnership with UCite around kind of applicants' commitment in terms of what they're looking to do going forward. So just for those of you who've not come across our work with UCite before, it's a program of research that we've entered into, which is surveying 18-year-olds around their appetite for higher education. And this is the 6th wave of research that we've done. We've been doing it every 2 or 3 weeks during the pandemic to kind of get their view on what the future will look like. Each of them we've surveyed over 500 students to get their views around their progression to higher education. So these are all current applicants who were applying for this cycle. So 2/3 of those applicants are telling us they're fully committed to their firm choice, which is good news. So when you're looking at students in terms of their potential transient nature, the majority of them are still happy with the choice that they've made. We've got just under a third who are somewhat committed, so are still holding that firm choice, but may be tempted to consider changing things as they go forward. And then we've got 5% at the minute who are not committed in terms of their response to the research. And that will be potentially either looking for other opportunities or considering deferral or looking at other opportunities that might be available to them outside the world of higher education. So I think overall it presents a sort of fairly positive picture that applicants are generally going to do what they say they're going to do, but I think this year over clearing we could see a few applicants looking to change their minds as they go through. So across the different waves of research, we've been asking applicants around deferring, and I'm sure for many of you it's a question that you get a lot when you're talking to potential students around their plans for the future. So at the minute, 18% of respondents are considering deferring their application from the Youth Site survey. So that has dropped slightly from the last couple of waves that we've engaged with over the last few months. In terms of inquiry levels here at UCAS, we get a lot of questions around deferring and what students' options are in terms of deferring places. But I'd say generally for every question that we get around a student wanting to find out how they defer a place, we'll also get a question from a student who has applied for deferred entry earlier in the cycle, looking at whether they can reverse that decision and actually come this September. So there are lots of students who have made their plans for gap years or to try and find some work over the next year and start in 2021, and those plans have fallen through and are looking to start this September. Obviously, when you look at the actual numbers, as I say, we actually have slightly less deferrals in the system at the moment. So although applicants may be considering it and looking at options, they're not actually making that commitment at this stage to make that deferral transaction. Obviously, that may occur over the next few months, and as students actually find out their calculated grades and find out what position they're in, we may see more students going down that route. But at the moment, although there seems to be plenty of conversation about it, there doesn't actually seem to be students making that hard and fast decision. So of those who expressed an interest in deferring when we asked them through the Youth Site survey, 78% of them had done what we would determine as light research. And that's basically talking to family and friends and looking at options that might be available to them. Of those who have actually been in touch with us or been in touch with yourselves as universities to find out what their options are, then they would be counted in that serious research box. So although there's some interest there, it's not actually manifesting itself into a potential change. Obviously, a lot of what happens with deferrals will be based on what happens with government guidelines and university responses to those over the coming months. And it could be that if we end up with a second wave or changes to lockdown arrangements, that number of deferrals or that interest in deferrals will change quite markedly towards the start of term. It is really a bit of an unknown at the moment in terms of what that will actually look like. Through the Youth Site surveys, we've also been asking students around what they are looking for in terms of information from the universities that they've applied to. And it's interesting talking to students and advisors about their experiences that actually at the start of the pandemic, many of them felt a little bit overwhelmed in terms of the information that they were receiving. And I think in many cases it was down to the fact that they were receiving kind of fairly generic information with sort of a don't panic message rather than anything that actually showed what a university's commitment to teaching provision actually is. So I'm sure for the vast majority of you, your universities will have identified to students who are enrolling what that enrolment process now looks like and how they can expect to be taught and what their living arrangements will be during that first year. But interestingly, that 43% of respondents saying that they really want to know about what the university's plans for the second lockdown, if there is one. So if things change during their time at university, how the university will actually respond to that. So as part of the survey, we were asking what the biggest impact was in terms of what would make you more committed to your firm choice. So I think obviously top of the pile, and nobody's surprise, is actually knowing their outcome from their calculated grades and what they've actually achieved will obviously make a big difference from that side of things. But also lots of interest around things like what academic life will be like at university and the way that they can expect to be taught during that first year. And also lots of concern around things like the social side of university. We get questions quite a lot, and I'm sure you do, around what Freshers Week will actually look like this year from that side of things. So certainly bits and pieces that you can be doing and feeding into colleagues around passing on some of that messaging to make sure students feel sort of better supported and ready to make that decision. So I think it kind of key things that we're picking up. So lots of questions around deferring, but it may be that students are looking at kind of other alternative options as well. But obviously for the majority, the biggest thing that will influence the decision on what they do will still be based around the grades that they achieve and whether they secure the places that they were hoping to through that process. So I think kind of overall from that data, it's kind of a positive story that applicants are still committed to that university journey, and they're wanting to take up those places. So we've got reason to be optimistic, but there's probably more that we as a sector can be doing in terms of informing students around what to expect from that university experience. And then I think kind of key on the right is that things may be a little bit quiet at the moment in terms of applicant queries, but it doesn't mean that they're not kind of working away behind the scenes from that side of things. Just to touch on kind of a little bit more around clearing as well. So obviously we've started clearing last week with those applicants receiving IB results or currently unplaced in the system. So there certainly seems to be a demand from the use site work that we've commissioned that a lot of applicants will still be considering using clearing this year. I think alongside the challenges around the calculated grades, students are a lot more open to using clearing than they have been in previous cycles, as they're unsure exactly what their kind of school value performance will be when it's kind of looked at alongside their ranking within their class cohort. So I think a lot of nervousness around what clearing might be. So yes, I think kind of key things, applicants are thinking about clearing differently this year. We're anticipating we'll probably see more applicants using clearing than we have done in previous years. Certainly clearing's been growing as an application route over the last few years, and we had more than 60,000 students placed through clearing last year. So we can imagine that there will be more shopping around, and whether we get more applicants kind of using adjustment and things like that, rather than actually making a firm commitment to move somewhere else and just exploring their options. Obviously, we're also expecting that given the current climate, there may be less applicants who are released by their firm and insurance choices who've missed out on grades. So many universities will be softening their entry requirements to take more applicants. Obviously, mindful of the current financial situation and needing to secure as many students as possible, as long as they're inside their student number control that's in place for this year for securing them. So it could mean that we're into a very busy clearing this year with lots of queries and lots of applicants out there looking to utilise it. So just to touch on a few things specifically from a UCAS perspective. So like yourselves, we've been working fully remotely since the 23rd of March. So from our point of view, the cycle has continued very much as planned. We still have our team of staff supporting through our contact centre. So we have a team of staff working from home on the phones, and they will also be in place all the way throughout confirmation and clearing. So we'll be there to support applicants in the same way that we have done up until this point. We've also expanded our social media presence, so inquiries by social media up significantly, as you'd expect in this climate. So we have a larger team dealing with those as well. Obviously, over the last few months, we've been supporting providers upholding the moratorium that was issued by the Office for Students. So when there was a blanket ban on making unconditional offers, there's been lots of support and guidance available to providers and also to applicants around what that means. And as you may have noticed, we've made some changes to our RBDs and DBDs, which are our reject by default and decline by default dates, which were the deadlines by which providers or applicants needed to make decisions on the offers that have been made to them, to kind of bring them, allow applicants more time to consider their options and make those choices. And as some of you may be aware, we're running a lot of Facebook Live sessions, either on Facebook and also through the Hub as well, which is our essentially logged in section of search. So we're kind of really utilising video content to try and engage with applicants alongside that as well. And we're also running a series of virtual events. So some of you maybe have been involved in our pilot events, and we have some more taking place later this month. So although we can't be there supporting exhibitions face-to-face in the current climate, we're utilising different platforms to bring those events to applicants digitally as well. In terms of other things we're still looking at the moment, so we're looking at how we can support applicants who are unable to meet their conditions due to COVID. So if they've been set specific entry requirements that they're going to be unable to meet and need to start later, then how we can support those as well. We're also looking at how we actually close out our cycle this year, so when clearing will actually finish and when the cycle will close, and that will be based around when you kind of running your enrolment processes as well. I'm sure most of you are aware that we will have an autumn series of exams for students who want to actually resit examinations that they've been unable to do so this summer. And we're expecting a significant number of students will be looking to sit some kind of exam in the autumn. And they may be students who have taken up a place at university and just want to achieve a different result. But there may be students who are unable to take up a place who will essentially be resitting during that period. So we're looking at how we can support you in terms of being able to support those students who are going through that process at the moment. And we're also aware that there's a large number of private candidates as well who are taking exams outside of a supported setting, who are finding it very difficult to receive calculated grades. So again, another cohort of applicants that we're looking to support. We're also aware that some of you are changing your start dates. So some of you are moving towards more January starts. Some of you are delaying the start of term, moving from September to October. So working with your colleagues in admissions to make sure that we're supporting from that side of things. And then the key thing is kind of making sure our teams can all support confirmation and clearing successfully. So I'm sure many of you are involved in conversations in your own university about returning to the office and whether you'll be on campus over confirmation and clearing. So from our perspective, we're going to have a team of around 20 staff on site who will be looking after the core running of the business, but everything else will be done remotely. So all of our contact center, all of our social media and everything like that will be delivered remotely this year. And certainly talking to many universities, we're going to have a real mix. So some universities I'm aware have already committed to running everything completely remotely, but we've got others who are hoping to run some kind of call center operation on campus. So just making sure we're in place to support them. Final slide from me, just some key points around things that are changing for confirmation and clearing this year. The first is around the JCQ results embargo. So as you're probably aware, we receive examination results under embargo so that your admissions teams can make confirmation decisions on those results. Now, traditionally, the embargo ended at 6 AM on A-level results day. It's been extended this year, so it will finish at 8 AM. And that embargo applies to universities and also schools and colleges. So no students will be receiving their results before 8 AM. So it's just obviously very important that you're doing everything to uphold that embargo and not sharing any information before 8 AM. We've also made some changes in UCAS search. So we've added the ability for you to link through to a web form. So if you don't want to signpost applicants to phoning you over confirmation and clearing, then you can add links to your web form and also social media channels if you want to engage with applicants in that way. And we'll also be changing some of our advice and guidance around phoning universities, directing them to your website so that they can then identify the best method of communication with you from that as well. As many of you are probably aware, we've launched Clearing Plus, which is our new service for unplaced applicants, which is now live. And this essentially is an option within Track that unplaced applicants can go into and identify potential options available to them based on an algorithm that matches them to providers with vacancies. I know some of you are probably quite heavily involved in this, but certainly if you've got questions on that, please feel free to ask as well. And last year, we introduced the ability for applicants to be able to release themselves from unconditional firm choices in Track. That service will again be available this year. Around 30,000 students took that option last year to release themselves rather than having to phone a university to do that. This year, we're also capturing reasons. So applicants will be asked to identify the reason why they're choosing to go elsewhere, and we'll be sharing that information with you. You can actually access information live, and there'll be reports available at the end of the cycle as well. So that's kind of a bit of a whistle-stop tour in terms of where we are and what we're working on. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has, but my email address is also there if people want to drop me an email if there's anything that you had a more detailed question on.